All right, hopefully everybody had a nice lunch. We'll continue on here. We don't have too much left to do. Um, so we'll actually probably finish out a little bit earlier. So we already went through Google Keep, Drawings, Forms, and Classroom. So we'll take a dive into Sheets now, and then we'll go into Sites, Meet, and then we'll play around a little bit with Google Maps and its associated apps along with that. All right, so we are on the Sheets slide, which is slide number 62. And for today, we'll look at some of the quote unquote advanced features in Google Sheets here. So we'll look at a few things that you can do in Google Sheets here. Kind of step up your game there a little bit. If there's anything specific that you want to see, feel free to ask away. I'll try my best there. Of course, Google Sheets is probably like one of the most complicated, if not the most like heavy-duty G Suite app out there. For our purposes, we'll kind of hit on these few bullet points here. Okay, so here on slide number 63, there's a link that says example. And once you click on that, it'll take you over to make a copy of this sheet. It's a demo sheet. It just has a bunch of filler data in there for us. So what we'll do is on the very first page when you open up that example Google Sheet, it has a bunch of checkboxes here for us. We won't necessarily cover each one. We'll kind of basically hit the ones that are on the slide, on slide 63. If there's anything on here that you still want to see, feel free to shout out and we'll take a peek. All right, so our first one on the slide here is saving filters. So filters are a way for you to be able to just hide away the items that you don't need to see in a spreadsheet. It's not going to delete them, it just hides them away temporarily. And when we do a saved filter, you're able to reopen that filter over and over again, so you don't have to do all the setup every time. So let's do the roster tab at the bottom. So at the bottom, the second tab over is called roster. And what we'll do is we'll set up a filter, and we're going to save that filter so we can use it over and over again. So in order to set up a filter, first we need to highlight everything. The easiest way to do that is if we come up to this little square between the A and the 1, way up in the top left. That's a nice quick way just to highlight everything. So once you have everything highlighted, we'll click on the filter icon, which is over here in the top right. It looks like a little funnel. Give that a click. Everything will turn green for a second for us here. And the first row is going to be kind of like bolded, and each one will have like a little green triangle next to each of those headers. And maybe we want to do a filter where we're hiding away based on like the different students' homerooms here. So what we'll do is we'll click on the little green triangle next to homeroom here. And in this checkbox here, everything that has a check mark next to it is going to show up. If nothing, the ones that don't have a check mark next to them are the ones that aren't going to show up. So maybe I just want to see Mr. George Harrison and Mr. Paul McCartney's homerooms. I'll click on OK, and it hides away everything else. Okay, and again, it didn't delete anything, it just hid those ones away. Now the nice thing that we can also do here is we can save this filter. So the way to do that is if we come up to the same filter button, but instead this time we go to the little drop down next to it, and we can do save as filter view, and we can even rename it up here in the top left by name. So this is McCartney and Harrison. All right, now I have that saved filter. So even if I, close out of these filters and totally turn it off, I don't have to do all that setup where I have to highlight everything, turn on the filter, find the right ones to do. Instead, all I have to do is come to the drop down next to the filter icon and click on McCartney and Harrison. And just like that, I have that saved filter. Now, the other thing to notice too, watch what happens in the address bar when I change when I change the filters. Notice the address actually changes. And watch when I change it back. Notice that. So what that means is because the web address changes a little bit there, I can actually share this web address with other people. So if I need to like share like a bunch of data with like, you know, my principal or something like that, and I don't need them to see all the stuff that I have in here, but maybe they just need to see like a specific filtered thing, I can just copy this link and go and share it with my principal. As long as I have the sharing settings turned on here in the spreadsheet for itself here, anyone with a link can view it. So if I copy this link here, I copy it over and I send it over to somebody else. This is just a guest window, like nobody's even logged into this browser. When they come into this sheet here, when I give them that address, it jumps them straight into this filter. Okay, so again, that could be really handy when sharing something like things with like a principal or with another teacher or whatever it is, and you can just kind of give them that little filtered view without all that extra stuff, and you don't have to like instruct them for how they can find the filter and all that sort of stuff too. Okay, so that one's not too bad at all, right? There's a few steps to know with that. Now, another thing that was new in Google Sheets here is we have a new way to filter. So if we highlight everything here again, and we'll turn on the filter on this one. So I'm in the Quarter 1 tab this time. Another new thing that they did here in Google Sheets is we can not only filter by what's in the cell, we can also filter by the color of the cell. So if I want to filter by the color and I only want to see like these are my student grades, and maybe I just want to see the ones that aren't doing very good. So like maybe like the reds and the oranges and the yellows here. So I can filter by fill color. I want to see only the reds, or I can come in here and I can look at the light reds, and so I can filter out by those different colors as well, which is pretty cool. I can also sort by color as well. If I want to sort by color and have the yellows show up first, that's just another thing that you can do. Okay, and the nice thing to know as well is even though I'm only sorting by like this column, by this percentages column, and all the other information that's associated like with this score is still brought to that point. Like to that line with everything else. It's not like only changing this one column. It's still bringing over all of the information in all the other columns too. Those are basically attached to each other. Okay, and I'll jump back here again. All right, so that was saving filters. Pretty handy kind of thing to know. Now we'll go into a little bit more on functions and formulas here. So of course, formula, there's a million different things that you can do with formulas. And you can basically make whatever you want out of them. And if you're not sure how to make one, this is where you can really just use the kind of the built-in help page that's in here. So let me go into this example here. So if maybe I want to find like here I'm in the Quarter 2 tab. Maybe I want to find like the class average percentage. Maybe I want to do that. So if I want to create find out what the average is, maybe I'll have average, and then in this next cell here, I want this cell to be the average percentage score for the class. Okay, this is one of the most common formulas. It's super helpful to use, and all formulas are always going to start with an equal sign in that cell. And in this case, I want to do an average. In this case, the way that works is I'll have to type out the word average. Notice it gives me all these different suggestions, and even based on where I started typing this formula, it gave me a suggestion based on the data. And this is actually pretty much what I need. It goes the average of E2 to E17, and that's exactly what I want. And it fills that in automatically for me. And watch what happens if I change one of the scores here. So this one, like this kid got 900 out of 950 possible points. So maybe she didn't do that good. She only got 400 points. It's going to really tank the average. And if I click on enter on that, watch the average percentage. Right now it's at 86.43. And just like that, it changed to 83.14. So all the stuff is still live. Once you have those formulas in place, it's going to be just continuously updating anytime any changes happen. Okay, so that's your average formula. That one's a pretty common one that you'll use. Another one that's really common, like for the purposes of a grade book, is you might have a something set up like this where we have how many points we've earned, how many points are possible, and then our percentage, right? So of course our points possible. Actually, I think I have a more robust one. Do I have my bigger one? Oh, I guess I don't. All right, well, I'll add a few more then. Let's do this here. I'm gonna add a couple more columns over here to the left. The way I'm adding these columns is I'm just hovering over the column header. So the columns are A, B, C, D, rows are 1, 2, 3. If you right click on top of them, you can choose to insert one left or right. So I'm going to add in just a few of them here, and we'll just add in just a few assignments real quick. So I'll just do assignment 1, assignment 2. And I think if I go like this, it should fill in the series for me. Perfect. If you notice how I just did that, I filled in that little series. Because I created a series here with assignment number 1 and assignment number 2, if I highlight those and then if I drag right from this bottom right square where my cursor turns into a cross and then click and drag that, it'll continue that series for me. Okay, you do have to have the first couple of a series for it to understand that you're wanting to fill out the rest of the series. Okay, and then we'll just start to fill in the some points possible here. So I'll just do one row real quick. All right, so let's say the first assignment, she got 20 points on the first assignment. She got 25 points on the next one. Next one, she got 17 points. And then the last one, she got 19 points. Okay, and I'll get rid of all these. I'll get rid of all these. And so here's our first student here. And these are her scores for those 4 assignments. Now we need to figure out what her total points earned are. All right, so we can use another formula here. Just like all formulas, it's always going to start with an equal sign. Now this time, instead of doing an average, we don't need to do an average. We need to add all this stuff up, right? We can sit here and do all this math, but we don't need to. We can do a formula. So in this case, we can do a formula called sum, S-U-M, and when we click on it here, it's going to give us this box that gives us the directions for how this formula is supposed to be written. Okay, it tells you what it actually does and it tells you how to write it. Okay, so mine's equal sum, and then it's telling me to put the value in here. I only have to put in 1. I can do more if I want to, but here's the range that I need to put in. So in this case, since here's my cursor, it's sitting in that in the middle of this formula, I can actually just click and drag over the cells that I need. I could also type that in if I wanted to, but that's all the information I need. I'll close out that closing parenthesis, and then I'll hit enter. And now that's my total points earned. Okay. Now that same thing could also be dragged down. So if we had another student who has their scores, and maybe they got that score there, that, same score there, and now we can click and drag from the bottom corner of that cell down there, and we can see that student score as well. And so we can just continue on dragging that same formula on down without having to rewrite this formula over and over again. Okay, so that's how we can do some sums. And then we can also figure out our points possible. Of course, that depends on how many points worth of assignments that you were doing. So I'll just kind of arbitrarily put like 90 points in here. Those are your points possible. And notice that these automatically filled in over here, right? So what happened over here is in this percentage box, we have another formula sitting in here. In this one, we have equals G2/H2. So let me explain what this is. So of course, all formulas are going to start with an equal sign. G2 is our total points earned. Here's G2, those are coordinates, right? Then the slash means divide. And then the H2 is our points possible. There's H2. So that is our points our points earned divided by our points possible. That gives us our average percentage, right? And it's the exact same formula further down this column. All right. Now what's happening over here, you also noticed that this letter grade changed when I put when that score went in. That automatically wrote an A in there. How did that happen? So this is kind of a longer, funky formula here. So as you can see, this one is a more complicated, longer formula. This one's an ifs formula. And basically what this one's saying is, if what's happening in I2 is this one, that's our percentage. If what's happening in I2 is greater than or equal to 0.9 or 90%, you're going to write an A in that spot. If what's happening in I2 is greater than or equal to 0.8 or 80%, you'll write a B. If whatever's happening in I2 is greater than or equal to 0.7 or 70%, you'll write a C, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, since you guys have this document, you have this Google Sheet here on slide number 63, that example link, that formula, this long kind of funky formula here is in the quarter 2 tab at the bottom. I think it's also in the quarters 1 and 3 tabs as well. Yeah, well, let's see. That is only in the quarter 2 one. So in the quarter 2 tab rather, under the letter grade column, here's that formula. This will work as long as you have it in the same position. So your final percentage has to be in that location in the I column. Okay, and notice what happens if I go one row down, the one where there's a B. It's still in the I column, but it's I3, because instead of looking at I2, it's looking at I3. It's looking at the one down. Okay. So that whole formula there, you don't have to worry about memorizing anything like that. Just know this is a custom formula that I had to figure out how to write. So it could do that for me. So every time, a percentage comes in here, I'll just kind of make some more. Notice how these are all 0 because I'm marked as Fs. But if I have a 90 in there, notice how that changes to 100% and an A. If this goes to 67%, there you go. And if that one's 55, et cetera, all that stuff's going to automatically fill in for you. And feel free to steal this formula. That's totally fine. You can just copy that and use that in for your own purposes. Okay, so those were just a couple of formulas. Now here's one more thing that's kind of cool to use as well. Now, if you are familiar with checkboxes, here in the attendance tab, we're using the sheet basically as an attendance tracker. And so what we have going on here is we have all our students, we have the dates, and then we just, as the teacher, come in here and just check off the students that are here on that date. So on 11/12, okay, he was here, she was here, he was here, he wasn't here, he was here, they were here, not them, them, and you can just pick out all your students, right? And you'll notice at the bottom here, that number is changing depending on how many people are checked off. And so what's going on in this column here? Look at this formula. This is another formula called count if. So this one, just kind of like the name sounds, count if, here's our summary, it's going to return a conditional count across a range, meaning it will count it as 1 if a certain criteria is met. Okay, and so the way this is written is, like all formulas, it's equal sign, the name of the formula, in this case it's count if, then you put it in your range, meaning where to look, and then you put in true. Now, what true means is if a checkbox is checked off, notice what happens up here in the address bar, or I'm sorry, in the formula bar. It marks it as true when it's checked off. When it is not checked, it's marked as false. Okay, so that's how this works. If it's basically looking in the cell, and if it's checked off, meaning true, it's marked as 1. So each one that is marked as present for class gets a little check mark. Pretty cool. All right, so those are just a couple of formulas there for you guys. Of course, there's a ton more that you can find here in Google Sheets. Up in the top right, we have all these different formulas. Basically, each one you can just click on it; it'll drop it right into that whichever cell you're clicked into. And if you don't have um, the little help window, you can click on this little. Oh, my Google Assistant went off. If you don't have that little help window with with the formula that you're putting in, click on the little blue question mark, and then up will come your little help window there. Okay. If you accidentally closed it, that's just where it goes. So question mark to close, and there you go. Okay. So if you ever get those stuck or lost, that's kind of just how they disappear or reappear. Okay. And we'll jump back in here. Now we'll look at conditional formatting. So conditional formatting is where you will take, create some sort of formatting, meaning you can change the color of the cell, you can make it bold, italics, underline, that sort of thing. And you can set certain conditions to make it change that formatting. So like in this case here in the Q3 tab, I have all these different colors going on for these different percentages, and they'll change based on what the percentage is. So like if I change Jon Snow's here, his percentage or his grade, he originally had 567 points out of 1,000. Maybe he actually got 800 points out of 1,000. And notice that just changed. Okay, so how do we do that? So what we'll do is we'll highlight the column or rows or whole range that we want. We want the conditional formatting to show up in. Then we'll go under the Format tab and do conditional formatting. And you can see I already have all these rules set up, but I'll just make a new one here under Add a new rule. And basically what we'll do is we'll format the cells under any of these conditions. There's obviously a ton of different conditions that you can do. In this case, what I did to make these different colors based on what percentage you get, I did the is between. Okay, so it's going to format if the values in these cells are between this number and this number. So like for example, if a student gets an A, that means that they get between 100% and 90%. Maybe I want the cell to turn green. So what we'll do is it's between 100% is 1, because we have to work with decimals here, or 0.9, or 90%. Maybe we'll turn the fill color to this nice bright green, and we'll make it italics and bold. And we'll say OK. All right, I'll have to get rid of my other one that was for the high level, so we'll remove that. And notice here's those few that were between those percentages. So if I change another one, so maybe this person got a 900, notice what changes. All right. If as long as the points, as long as the percentage rather, is between those values, it'll change to that color. All right, and you can see all the other ones that I have already. So if it's between 0.8999 and 0.8, that's a B. It'll be colored orange. If it's between 0.7999 and 0.7, I'll make it yellow, etc., etc. Okay. And that's conditional formatting. It's not too complicated, but the cool thing about that too is, like we saw earlier, we can still sort by or filter by color rather. So we can come in here and highlight that one column if we want to, and then we can filter by color, and we can just see maybe our light red ones, those are our ones in trouble. So okay, there's the one kid who's getting 65%. Maybe he needs a little help. Okay. All right. All right, then we'll go into charts and graphs real quick here. So sticking on the Q3 chart here, maybe we want to do a chart that has our students' last names and their points earned in the class. So in order to make a chart, we just have to highlight the information that we want to be in the chart. So we'll have something like this. So we want to have these two columns. So once we have that highlighted, we'll do insert and then chart. It's going to automatically drop a chart in that gives us, it uses basically AI to figure out which type of chart would best match with the data that you're highlighting. But you can still change it in the chart editor over here on the right side. So if you want to change any of these, you can. In the customize part here, you can change your titles. So if you want to say, what is this, quarter 3, Q3 scores, and you can change all your fonts and all that fun stuff. And you can change your different keys. So if I want these to be different colors, I can have them flip axes if I want. I can add another data point if I'd like. I can have these different kind of things show up here. So if you want to have like an extra point showing up, you can even highlight a certain one for a certain data point, and you can change that one. You can have the legend. You can also show grid lines if you'd like. So there's a ton of stuff you can kind of poke around with in these charts here. And then if you also want to share this chart like with somebody else, you can also download it here just as a picture. You can also move the chart to its own sheet, which will create a new tab at the bottom that's only this chart. Okay. And if you'd like to share this with somebody else, you can just copy this link up here. And as long as the chart is set, as long as the spreadsheet is set to set up for sharing, you can do that. You can also do publish chart over here. And you can get a link that would only go straight to the chart. So we'll copy this. And if you shared that with other people, they would just get this chart here. And they can see all these different data points and all that fun stuff. All right. And other things that you can do too is you can even take this chart and have it show up in other places. So if like you have a chart here and you want it to go and show up like in a Google Sheet, you can do that as well. So, or I'm sorry, in a Google slide rather. If you want to take this chart here and have it show up in a Google slide, you can do that too. So if I come into just a new blank slideshow here. We can head into a new slideshow and paste this chart in. So again, if you come in here and do copy chart, then over in like a spreadsheet, you can come in here and paste it in. If you decide to link the chart, any changes that happen in the chart back on the spreadsheet would be updated automatically over here in the slideshow. All right, so let's keep an eye on this Greyjoy one, which is kind of like on the lower side. And so if I change his score, oops, if I change his score back in here, and instead of getting that, maybe he got full credit, he got 1,000 points there. That will not only change it over here, but back over here on the slideshow too, we'll click on that update button, and that new one has been updated. Okay, so all this stuff talks to each other. It's all updating in real time. So you can have all this stuff basically just happening all at the same time. Okay, so imagine almost using something like this during like during like a parent-teacher conference where you have, your students, up on the score like this updated, and maybe you just have a different slide for each one of your kids, and it's kind of highlighted in this way, or something like that, and you can have your parents be able to see where he's standing in the class. Something to think about. Okay, and those were charts and graphs. Another more complicated formula is something called import range. The link on the slideshow leads over to this video, which basically explains how to do it, because it's a little tricky to use. But essentially what it does is you're able to grab the data from a whole different spreadsheet and have it show up here in this spreadsheet. So let me just make a new tab at the bottom here. I'll just call this import range. And so what I want to do is take data from another one of my spreadsheets. And I'll come over here and let me find another spreadsheet real quick that has just some data in here for me. So I'm going to come in here and find that works. I'll just take all this information in here. Oh. Let's say I just want to take all that information there. All right. So I'm just going to use this kind of block of information, and I want to basically bring it over into this sheet, into this copy sheet, but I want it to be continuously updating. Okay, meaning if any changes happen over here on the original, I want it to reflect those changes over here in the copy. So this is where we're going to use import range. And so here's our description here. So what we need to do is, here's how it's supposed to be written. So we have import range, open parentheses, spreadsheet URLs, meaning we need the whole URL from the spreadsheet where we're getting the data from. So meaning we're getting the data from here. So we're going to copy that. And we're going to paste it in here. Now, the one thing to notice is I have this extra stuff sitting in my link here. This, where we have a pound that says grid and equals a whole bunch of numbers, that's actually pointing specifically to this tab that I'm on in here. So I actually don't want to have that in here, believe it or not. And so then we hit a comma. And so now that's our first part. So we wrote import range, open parenthesis, we have the spreadsheet URL in there. Now we need to have the range string. So how do we find this? So the range string is the name of the tab you're on and the range in that tab. So how do we find that? So here's how we do that. In the tab, in the spreadsheet where we're pulling from, here's a nice easy way to find that. When we highlight what we want, we'll go under the data tab. And what we need to find is protected sheets and ranges. And here is the name of the that range. So notice it gives me the name of the tab and it gives me that range. Now we're going to come over here and paste that in. All right, now let's hit enter. Let's see if that worked. Oh, I think I need to have quote marks around our web address there. See if that worked. Oh, I think I need quotes around there too. So whatever's happening in the example sheet, we need to have the same stuff going on in that one. Oops, I messed up that part there. And let's see. And let me make sure I did this right. So we have our URL, It has quotes around it. There we go. We have that extra quote in there. There we go. So notice that there's a lot of those steps in there, because the big thing to notice, keep an eye out for all these those little quotes in there, and the ones that are like around there, and so it has to be at like an exact match. All right. So now, oops. So the information now that I have here is the exact information that I have happening over here. So let's look at like this one here where the student got 800 out of 950. Maybe I'll change their numbers that they got originally over here, and it should change it over in the copied spreadsheet. So maybe I'll give them full credit. I'll give them 950 out of 950. Right? And notice it just made that change over here in the copied spreadsheet. All right, whatever changes happen over there are gonna reflect in the imported range over here. Okay, so this is like the heaviest of the heavy duty in Google Sheets here. So that's like, if you can do that, you got it made in the shade with Google Sheets. And then you can really just brag to your friends how cool at spreadsheets you are, and then they'll be like, "Are you okay? I think you need to go outside again." Anyway. I'm not crying, you're crying. Anyway, so let's go ahead and continue on here. And that was our import range. There's also another thing I want to show you guys real quick. There's an outside website called Flippity. Has anybody used Flippity before? This is a cool website. It's been around for a while. The one thing to keep an eye on for about Flippity here is it has been around for a while, but in Google fashion, Google likes changing things a lot. And so sometimes Flippity has a little bit of catching up to do the way their programs work. And probably one of the coolest things about Flippity here is, I mean, one, there's all these like different little games that you can make out of a spreadsheet, and they give you these templates and they give you instructions for how to do them. So you can make like, word searches and cross puzzles and matching memory games, and you can do all this other cool stuff. One of the coolest things that I like is the name picker. And here's the instructions here. And basically what it does, it gives us a template. You put in all your different names. You basically just follow these steps, and by the time you're done, you get like a little spinner wheel like this with all your students' names in them, and then you just get to randomly pick a student. And you can even do like a little randomized thing like this. You can do like a little lineup thing. You can separate your students into different groups and kind of mix them up. So it's kind of a fun thing that you can just have just kind of sitting on the back burner. As you're trying to get students to work together, or if you just need to call on students, whatever you need to do. So if you want to check this out, again, it's linked on the slideshow on 63. Flippity. This one is called Random Name Picker. So basically what you do is you just go into the instructions part here and just follow these instructions here, and you'll be able to create one of those little spinner wheels. And of course, like I said, there's a ton more things in here. There's scavenger hunts, there's name pickers, there's bingos, there's hangman. There's a ton of cool stuff to check out. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and take another few minutes here. So let's do another 5 minutes, and we'll come back at 1:15. And so let's take some time here and organize a roster or some grades. You can continue to play around with the example spreadsheet I gave you guys that has just a bunch of that filler fake data in it. You can look at all the dumb movie and TV show references I made because I was really bored while making it, so I had to think of something to entertain myself with. So you can play around with that, or you can use your own actual data and gradebook and stuff to poke around with. Try importing information from another tab, doing import range. Maybe try out a bunch of different formulas, so try to average things, make a little grade book, play with the checkboxes to like count for attendance or that sort of thing. Maybe set up some conditional formatting, all that fun stuff. All right, so let's take about 5 minutes. We'll come back at 1:15. If you have any more questions, like before, feel free to shout out. In the meantime, we'll come back in just a few. All right, so we good to go to our next section. Again, feel free to fire away in the chat or unmute yourself and ask away. All right, so our next section here is on Google Meet, Google Meet / Hangout / Voice here. Our main bit here will be with Google Meet, just because, of the uh, prevalence of Google Meet right now. So Hangouts and Meet can both do video chats. So what's the difference? Basically, if you're on your school account, go with Meet. Meet will let you will let you have a lot more people in one video chat. And with Google Meet now, you're able to record your meetings as long as your excuse me, as long as your Google administrator has that turned on for you. So you should be able to record your Hangout meetings, or I'm sorry, your Google Meet meetings. And as another point of clarification here, Google recently changed how the names work. Google Hangouts is one product. Google Meet is a separate product. In the past, there was Google Meet was referred to as Google Hangouts Meet, and that was confusing. So now it's just called Google Meet. Okay, so there's Google Hangouts and then there's Google Meet. Okay, so getting started with Google Meet here. You can find it at meet.google.com or in the waffle. So let's go ahead and just dive into it here. And a good thing I'm actually using Zoom for our video conference, or this would be really confusing. So here we are in our Google Meet. The cool thing is you get a little artist background for each time you come into Meet, so you get a different background picture every time, which is cool. And then here, all you have to really do is click on this Join or Start Meeting button here. You don't have to put in anything in this spot. You can if you want to. You can have a nicknamed meeting that it does have to be a unique name, so people can join into your meeting without having to put in the weird long join code. Okay. Now, here's the thing: if you are using Google Meet here with your students and you're a Google Classroom user, you can actually do those together. All right. Google recently combined the two, Google Meet and Google Classroom. So if I come in here into my remote learning class here, you'll notice I have this other button here that says Meet Link. Okay. Now, if you don't have this, you'll go into your settings gear up in the top right, and we just have to turn on this button here. Okay. For this class code or this class Meet to be available for students to join. This way, you don't have to keep sharing links with them. You don't have to have a custom named Google Meet for them to worry about or anything like that. So this is here. It's housed inside of your Google Classroom. You'll have a unique one for each of your different Google Classrooms, and you can even come in here and you can reset the Google Classroom. I'm sorry, the Google Meet here. So it's actually kind of a whole different room. And this is nice for a couple of reasons. One, students are not going to be able to join this Meet unless you're in it already. Okay, students are not going to be able to just join in here with their friends and chat through here. They have their own different platforms that they can do that with. They don't need to mix in the school ones. Okay, and two, as kind of like I said here, you don't have to worry about managing all these other different classrooms or anything. You can have just a Google Meet that's continuously set here for your students to join into. It's always going to be showing up here at the top of your screen under the title of your class here. It'll also show up in the classwork tab under this Meet button. Okay. So it's up to you to kind of schedule these things for when you schedule them. Of course, you'll kind of schedule out these live classes when you can, depending on what your school's plans are. So if it's a kind of a standing thing where maybe I'll create a material here, and I'll say remember, oops, remember, we have live classes every day at 10 a.m. Okay, whatever it is. And we don't need any description or anything. This is just here as a thing for all of our students to see. And and anytime a student comes into the class, they see this material just sitting here, and they're like, oh yeah, it's 10 o'clock, time for me to go into the live class with the teacher. Okay. All right, so let's actually go and dive into the Google Meet here. So if I create one here, I'm not going to give it a name. I don't need to. Somebody had a question. Once I log out, does it take the students out of the Meet as well, or do they have to wait for them to log out? That's a good question. I believe it will. I believe it will kick everybody out if the teacher leaves. That's a good question. We can actually test that real quick. So here I am inside of the teacher's side of Google Meet. And I'll actually go ahead and actually, you know what? I need to do this from the Google Classroom side actually, because that was just it's a standalone one here. Let me go back in. I'll open it from this side here. So here's this classroom Meet here. I'll turn off both of those things. And all right, so here I am in this one. This is the remote learning classes Google Meet. And I'm going to go into the student side here. And the student's going to join in here. So let's go ahead and hop in the class. So let's say, you know, it's time to go and join that class. We'll come into the classroom. It's like, oh yeah, we have classes oh yeah, right. So go into Google Meet. Here comes Andrew. He's one of my students. Turn off both of those things just for our purposes here. And we'll join on in. All right. Back on the teacher side, I see myself and then I see my student. All right. If I leave, so let's test this out. Actually, I haven't tested this. This is a good question. If I leave as the teacher here, what happens over on the student side? Aha, so the students are left in here. That's a good thing to know. That is a good thing to know. So the student can still sit in here. Let me see as the teacher. Let me see if when I rejoin here. I can come in here. Let me see if I'm able to kick him out as the teacher. Yep, I can. So as the teacher, I can come in here and I can still remove him though. Okay, so as the teacher, if I come under the little people tab here, here's Andrew. I'm logged in as my teacher, as me. Andrew's my student. I click on the drop down for him and I remove him. All right. So after your class is done, you could remove everybody out and then just log out yourself here. And just close on out of this stuff. And as the teacher goes, he should not be able to join in. Oh, he's still able to join in. I wonder why he's still able to join. That needs to be worked on, I think. All right. In the meantime, you can just tell your students, you guys won't be able to get back in, so don't even try. All right. This also may have been the case because I'm on the same computer switching between accounts, so that may be a factor. If I had a second computer, I could have taken a peek at that. Okay, so let me jump back again here. All right, so let's actually go into a Google Meet here. I'll just launch into this one again here. Using it is pretty darn simple. I'm sure you guys have played around with Google Meet if you haven't already. There's not too much to it, honestly. If you're a Zoom user, it's going to look very simple by comparison. But basically, we have a present button, and we can choose to present our entire screen or just one of the windows that we have open. You'll notice when I click on your entire screen here, I have two choices here because I have a second screen set up next to my laptop. So I have two screens to choose from. So I can choose which one I want to share and then share it. Okay. So you just have to think of which screen you want to actually be sharing. Yep. And so somebody just put in the chat, there's a couple of great extensions for Google Meet. One is called Grid View. here's the extension for it. You can just Google for it. Somebody put the link in it, so thank you very much for that. This one will give you like a full screen like grid view of all your participants, so you can see all your kids. In the like the built-in version of Google Meet, you can only see I think like 4 at a time, I think. So this way you can see a lot more people at once. Another cool one is called Nod. I think I uninstalled it because it was acting funny. But another extension is called Nod. I'll search for Nod. Here we go. And so this one will let you have a little reaction, so you can have like little thumbs ups, and like you can like do like a little raise hand picture and that kind of stuff. There's a few cool things that you can do with those too. I'll put this one in the chat as well for you guys to check out. There you go. And so both of those extensions will add a little extra functionality for you. A couple other things just to be aware of. In the 3 dots in the bottom right, this is where you'll see your button for recording meetings. Now, this is something that does have to be turned on by your administrator. So some schools may or may not have this on. So if you are told that you need to record your Google Meet meetings, this is how you do it. It just has to be turned on from the admin console. We have a question from somebody. Do the kids have to have this installed too? They don't have to. They don't have to have Nod or Grid View installed. If they want to use them, they have to have them installed. Yes, but they're not a requirement to use Google Meet. But if they actually want to do a nod, do a thumbs up or a smiley face or whatever, then yes, they would. Okay. You can also change the layout from here for how this is going to show up, like between your people's webcams and what's happening on the main screen. So you can change those layouts at will there. Then also you can also turn on captions as well. It basically does its best to live transcribe what you're talking, what you're saying, and it'll just post it as closed captions at the bottom of the screen. Under the settings, this is where you can choose your audio and video settings. So your microphone, make sure you're using the right microphone. Like right now I have this headset on, right? Because the microphone in my laptop is really screwy, so I have to use the headset. So I have to make sure that the headset, the microphone with Google Meet is the headset, not the computer. And same thing for the speakers. Since I'm using the headset, I might as well use the speakers that are in the headset. Of course, I don't have to. Then in the video here, you can choose which webcam you're pulling from. If you only have one webcam, obviously you'll only have one choice, and you can choose your different resolutions and all that fun stuff. Okay. Over here on the bottom left-hand side is where you're going to find your dial-in code for people that can call in. You can also call into the meeting to hear the audio. Obviously, it behaves like a regular phone call, so you're not going to be able to see what's going on unless you join the meet on a computer as well. Some kids might find that easier to use just a phone to call in. It would be, in this case, it would be this number. Some kids might find that easier if they have like a slower connection, or if their microphones or speakers aren't working very well on their devices. It might be a better option. All right, and then this link here is the link that will join that you can join right into this meet. You can also find any calendar attachments are going to show up here as well. And we'll go into the Google Calendar in just a second. Okay, and since this is the this is the Google Meet from Google Classroom, it has a unique nickname here that's just automatically created for that classroom. Okay, and then down at the bottom is our bottom control buttons, and that's pretty much it. All right, it's very simple to use. That's the greatest thing. Now let me go real quick into our Google Calendar here, and we'll take a peek at how to schedule these Google Meets in Calendar. Now, let me hide away that one. So let's say I just want to make a video chat scheduled for tomorrow. I'll click and just create a calendar event like I normally would in Calendar here. Maybe I just want to have like a little team meeting. So maybe I'll say team or teacher team meeting. And we'll set our time. Okay, that sounds good. And under this add conferencing is where we're going to choose Google Meet. Okay, here it automatically is going to create a link for us. We can also set a reminder, which is actually really nice. We can set an email or notification reminder. I like the email ones just because I get an email a certain few minutes before it's supposed to start, and it gives you the link to join the meet right away, which I find pretty handy. And then down below here, this is where you can add in some attachments. So remember a few seconds ago, I was under that attachments button in Google Meet. This is where you can attach in some files for people to look at in the meeting as well. All right, so if you want people to have all the same files during that time, you can just grab whatever you want, either from your computer or from your drive. Okay. After you do a recording, after you do a Google Meet recording, it's automatically going to create a folder for you in your Google Drive. So when we come over into our Google Drive, here's my Meet recordings folder. Again, this is automatically created. I did not make this folder. It's just automatically made. When I go into it, I see all of my previously recorded Google Meets. All right, so here's this one I did yesterday, and here's this a recorded webinar for those 48 minutes long that I did yesterday. All right, and so it's sitting here as a video in my Google Drive that I can refer to whenever I need. I can share it out like normal. I can download it, do whatever I want with it. It's not going to go anywhere. It's sitting in here in my Google Drive just like any other file. Okay. All right, and then there's all that fun stuff there. And we'll continue on. This is a little side extra note for you guys. This is a great website that I came across a while ago called Empatico. It has nothing to do with Google at all, but it's just really cool. So I just want to share it with you guys real quick. So this is a website that really focuses on social emotional learning. I know that's kind of a big thing that that teachers are trying to push for their students. And what this website does, it will pair your class with another class somewhere else in the world, and it actually it goes to great lengths to make sure it's a class that's far away from where you are. It will geotag you, and it will, I believe they said it won't match you with anybody that's closer than like 300 miles from your location. So you're always going to be paired with somebody pretty much from the other side of the world, right? So there's really cool stuff to check out. So if you're so interested in that, I think I linked it here. Yeah. So if you look on that logo, it'll take you over to Empatico's website here. It's a really cool thing. They comes with like lesson plans and different like activity prompts and things like that, and they'll basically connect you with different schools from around the world. So like might have like your kids talk to students that are over in South Africa or something, and you get to have these really cool conversations and go over these like different types of activities. So definitely something to kind of check out. And of course, all this stuff is just done through video chat. All right. Then real quick into Google Voice. So this one's especially nice to have because of remote learning, and we really don't want to give our personal phone numbers out to our families, our parents, and students here. So you can do services like Remind, which are really great. But Google Voice lets you actually make voice calls from your computer or from your cell phone. And so if we come into Google Voice here, they have been updating things. I have to double check and see um, what their most recent updates are, because I don't remember if this is going to be still part of G Suite or not, or if it's going to be something that's going to be made only available in the enterprise, like paid version of Google. But it's something that's super useful, and a lot of teachers are using this. It's very simple to use. If you go in here, you can basically do a setup. It'll hook you up with it's a real phone number that can be called. You can get the app on your phone, and it basically does calling over internet. So instead of using like mobile data for like cell phone towers for calling, it actually just uses internet. That's what VoIP is. You may have seen that kind of term every now and again. So it basically does phone calls over the internet, which is nice because again, you don't have to give out your real cell phone number to parents or students or anything like that. There's no texting in here, so this is most for like voice calls. Okay, I won't go too deep into that. If something you're interested in, it's super easy to set up. You basically just sign up and you pick a phone number and you're pretty much off to the races there. All right. One thing I wanted to mention as well is Google Hangouts. So let me head off into Google Hangouts real quick. That's one thing I didn't really mention in here. So like I said, Google Hangouts and Google Meet are very similar. They can both do video calls. It's essentially kind of pretty much the same idea, even if you, in fact, if you click on the video call button from here, if you're on a G Suite for Education account, it'll just take you right over to Google Meet. But this is a way that you can do IM, like text messaging. So you're able to text people from here as well. You just have to have their email. It's all just based inside of Google. Again, it's basically Google's IM service here. So this is another way that you can message students. You can, again, get the app on your phone and you can basically text with students or parents that way. Okay. All right, so that was a pretty quick one. That one's not too complicated. Again, Google Meet's probably the most common one you'll use, especially with what's going on now. So let's take another 5 minutes or so here, and let's go ahead and we can't really voice chat with a neighbor, but you can kind of poke around and play around in Google Meet. Maybe practice with setting up a Google Meet in the calendar. Maybe set up a fake number with Google Voice, or set up a voicemail in Voice, or practice over in Google Hangouts. All right, so let's take another couple minutes here. Let's come back at, I don't know, 1:42. Let's do that. And then we'll move on to our second to last section, I think, about Google Maps and Earth and the like. All right, so let's take another about 5 minutes here, and then we'll come back again.
Dan, can I ask you a real quick question about Google Calendar?
Sure.
A lot of the teachers put their assignments on it and color code those. Is there any way that I can hide those and just see mine?
Sure.
My assignments and things?
Yeah, so when you are, let me go into my calendar here. Come on. Yes, when you're in your calendar, just along the left-hand side here, you'll just have all these different calendars that you have here. So some of them are like the ones that are mine. Some of them are the ones that are shared with me, that are other people's. So I see like all these other ones here that have all this other stuff. If it has a check mark over here on the left-hand side, that means it's going to show up. You can just hide it away by clicking on that checkbox. Like if you don't need to see it, you can just uncheck it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Catherine says she likes Flippity. Awesome. Let's see, Katrina has a question. So I use Meet a lot. Do I bring up my meetings, then click the grid view extension? Yeah, you'll click on the extension. There's actually a button that comes up in Google Meet. Looks like a little checkerboard thing, and you just click on it once people are in there, and it just makes a grid out of all the people that are in the meeting. I'll be right back. We'll continue in just a second. All right. And I got more water. My voice is going hoarse for talking for so long. It's my own fault for making the session 5 hours long. All right, so we'll continue on here. We'll move into our, I think this is our, coming down to the end here. All right, so our second to last session here, I believe, section is on Google Maps, Earth, and more. So these are kind of the Google Maps type apps here. Some of these are not technically actually really part of G Suite, but I think they're still worth checking out because you can still do some pretty cool stuff in here. Sorry. All right, to start out with here, we're going to Google Meet. I'm sorry, too many M's. Google Maps. In Google Maps here, of course, we can use Google Maps for navigation, of course. You can send the location from your laptop to your phone, fun. You can also embed the code into Google Sites, which is nifty. But we can also do something called My Maps, which is a really cool thing in Google Maps here. And here's something that's kind of like a finished product here. And so here's like, you know, places around Cleveland or different like stores that I go to. And I can have all this stuff here. Let me zoom in a little bit here. And for each one of these locations, I have a little description, and I can even have, you know, a little picture for each one. And it'll basically just have a little marker on the map for each place. It's pretty cool. So this is something that's really easy to use. Basically, you could just find a location that you like. So you know, if I do, let's see. Oh, God, what's the new name of the Quicken Loans Arena? It's not that name. It's Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. What a terrible name! I hate that so much. There, yeah, that's the one. It's so confusing of a name. What a terrible name. And so we find the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. It is way too long of a name. It is so dumb. Anyway, and then we find a location that we like, and we can click on Add to Map. And it'll become a location, basically like a saved location on our map here. And we can even come in here and change around, you know, we can have a different picture for it. We can even do a Google image search, Cleveland Cavs. Sure, we'll have a picture of the Cavs in there. And you can save that. And you can just have all these different like locations in here. You can even have things like, you know, their websites and all that stuff if you want. You can even change. You can notice I have some of the little pins that aren't actually pins. Some of them are different little symbols, so you can change those as well. You can kind of play around with all that stuff in here, and it's kind of a fun thing for students to kind of just mark different things on a map. And you can basically just have a little My Maps going around here, and you can have all these different like locations basically saved right here on your account. It's kind of a fun thing. All right, not terribly complicated, just kind of a fun thing to kind of mark on your map. You can even come and do a little preview that's like a kind of like a finished version, I suppose, and it'll zoom in. You can basically get like a little finished kind of view of all of your different places. Okay, kind of a little fun extra thing. You could definitely make. There's different activity ideas out there for students to make their own little mind map. Smarty pins, I think this has been discontinued now. It has, which makes me sad. Smarty pins used to be an activity where it give you like a little trivia quiz, and you would basically just drag a marker somewhere on the map, and it would basically tell you how close your marker was to the right answer. It was kind of a fun thing, but they've kind of discontinued it, which is a bummer. You can, of course, go into Google Earth, which is kind of like a more robust version of Google Maps. And there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do um, in Google Earth. That's not the one I want. I'll actually just go into Google Earth real quick. Back in the day, Google Earth was only available like as like a downloaded like external program that you'd have to download to your computer. The cool thing now is you can launch it right inside of the browser. Katrina just said she's done lit trips before. Absolutely, that's a perfect example. If you haven't done a lit trip, they're really, really cool. Essentially, what you do is you make like an interactive map, um, basically like benchmarking the different like places along the journey of like a story, and there's tons of different resources that are just basically out there on the internet for you to find. If you just search for like the name of the reading that you're doing and then lit trip, you might be able to find a couple of cool things. So here in Google Earth now, they've actually really beefed up the web version of Google Earth recently, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in here now, more than just look at the Earth and make it spin. Whee! Instead, what you can actually do now is there are these things called voyages. So if you go into the Voyager, it looks like a little pirate wheel. These are these pre-built um, uh, lit trips, for lack of a better term here, that basically take the viewer on a certain course around the world. It basically takes them to a bunch of different stops on this little tour, and it gives them a little thing to read or give them a little video to watch, and you can see a lot of cool stuff. When you click on the little Voyager icon, the little pirate ship wheel, you'll see all the kind of like the stuff on the front page here, but there's also an education section. And from here, you can kind of look at all these different pre-made voyages here. So we have things like this Underground Railroad one. We have James Cook's first voyages. We have, uh, rediscovering Champlain's astrolabe. We have a bunch of cool stuff in here. We can just click on any one of these. So we have, triangular structure. So maybe if you're a math teacher, we're talking about triangles. We can come in here and do explore. And it takes us on these different on all these different places. This one only has 5, so it's not too many, but it's a nice little introduction to different things. So it's kind of a fun thing to start out with. So as you're kind of running through your maybe a little hook to your lesson to kind of start out with, you can kind of start talking about all these different triangles. Here's the Bank Tower of China, and if I go to the next one over here, it'll fly me out and it'll zoom me over to the Eiffel Tower. It'll drag me in here, pops it in for us here. And here's a little extra stuff. It has a couple of links for us to check out. Then we go to another thing. It'll zoom me out. It's taking me over to the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas. And we kind of see all these cool like bits of geography and architecture, and depending on whatever it is. And some of these voyages are going to have just like text like this. Some of them will have videos to watch as well. Some of them will have like a little built-in quiz in there too. If you want to share these things with your students, let me kind of back out of this. If you want to share these things with your students, what you can easily do is if I go into this geometry of castles one here, from this starter page, before you click let's go, you can actually just copy this web address up here, and you can go and post that in Google Classroom for students to go and look at. It'll take them right to this page. They'll click on Let's Go, and it starts their little voyage for them too. All right, so there's a bunch of cool stuff for you to check out there. Another thing you can do is inside of the Google Earth web version here. Once this loads back up for me, you can actually basically create your own voyage, and especially students can make their own. They're kind of fun to make, honestly, and students I think will really like making these things. As long as students are able to get into Google Earth, we click on this little, looks like a little pin with a little piece of paper underneath it. It's called Projects. We can make our own little virtual field trip here. Like I have one here for a Washington D.C. trip here, and this is kind of like our finished project here. It'll zoom me over to the right spot here. It'll fly me in, and it drops me to whatever location I want to go into. Some places let you go inside. Like in this case, we were doing Street View. We're actually inside of the White House here, and we can do some walking around. In this little sidebar here, we can have any sort of text that we want to put in. Then we can go to our next stop on our tour. It'll zoom us out and fly us over to the next place. So in this case, we'll go over to the Lincoln Memorial. Depending on if where it is in Street View, we may or may not be able to walk around. You go over to another place. We'll go over to the Korean War Memorial this time. You can see around. If we have these arrows down here, that means we can walk around. You can tell this was before the coronavirus with all these people standing with each other. They're not social distancing. Anyway, so of course you can see all this stuff. And there's only 4 stops that I made on here, but of course you can make as many as you want on here. And you can have all these different stops along in your tour. And they're super easy to make without going into too much detail. Essentially what you do is you come over here and you make a new project. And you can do a new project and create a new one, give it a name, and I'll just call this 1, 2, 3. And we'll put in a new feature, which is basically a stop on our tour. And if we want to, we can basically just drop this wherever we'd like. We can make some different drawing lines. There's a bunch of different stuff that we can do. It's even going to like measure things like area and diameter and all that fun stuff in there too. Or I'm sorry, area and not diameter. What am I thinking of? Perimeter. That's what I was thinking of. Okay, and so of course you can kind of play around with that. Again, I think the real value here is letting students make their own little tours in here, because this is something that they can do right from the Chromebook. They don't have to have any other software or anything installed. It's right inside of Google Earth web version here. They can make their own little project in here, and all this stuff is, of course, just saved into their same Google accounts. There's a ton of cool stuff that students can make. All right. And back on the slideshow here, there's also Google Tour Creator, which is essentially the same thing that we just saw as we just looked at in Google Earth about creating a virtual field trip, a virtual tour. This one goes a little bit further. This one allows you to even create 3D VR tours. This will work in conjunction with the Google Expeditions mobile app and a 3D headset. So if you are using a 3D headset like Google Cardboard or those different VR viewers, those will let you basically create a virtual tour into our creator and then put that in the app in Google Expeditions, and then you can actually look at those tours in VR where you're like fully immersed, where you have the headset goggles on. It's really, really cool. For our purposes here, we can't really show that very much here since we're all kind of in our own homes, but it is very cool. All right, and then of course we have Google Tour Builder. This one is kind of on the outs now. Because Google Earth has the built-in tour builder feature. This website still is up as far as I know. Yeah, it's still up, and you can do essentially the same thing as we saw over in Google Earth. So if you want students to create their own virtual tour, you can just do it right inside of Google Earth. Google Tour Builder was the way to do it for a number of years. But since Google has updated Google Earth to allow you to make your own virtual field trips right inside of there, you really don't need to use Google Tour Builder anymore. All right. So let's take a couple of minutes here. And again, kind of poke around a little bit. I would recommend checking out Google Earth and take a look through some of those voyages, or start poking around in projects in Google Earth, or you can do mind maps. Those are the two I would recommend. But if you want to check out any of the other ones, of course you can. And let's take another 5 minutes or so. We'll come back a little after 2 o'clock here, and let's go ahead and take a few minutes. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to fire away, and we'll see you again in just a few. All right, we'll try to come back in just a couple of minutes here. We just have Google Sites to get through, and then we'll pretty much be wrapping it up for the day. Hopefully our brains aren't exploding too bad. Any thoughts or questions or anything so far? Feel free to shout out. Has anybody else used Google Earth in class before? What kind of stuff do you guys use it for? You just kind of like here's a map that we can look at, or are you guys like using like the like those little voyages in there? So we had someone do a study with our kids on landform. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Did you have like a guest speaker or something that was doing that? Okay, she's new to you. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm sure the kids probably enjoyed doing that. Awesome. I'm sure that's the thing about it's very time consuming to make those things as the teacher though. So I'm sure that took forever. And she was like, "Yeah, that was really cool. It was worth it, but man, that took forever." Right? So those are the kind of things that I always like to say. They're really cool for the teacher to make, but hey, if we can make the kids make them, that's where that's the dream right there. Uh, we used we used for trips around the world, dream vacation sports. Okay, dream vacation spots and sports. All right, very cool. All right, so we'll jump into our last section for the day. I just realized the slideshow was a little bit out of order. The sites was supposed to be way further down. It's we're gonna jump back on the slideshow to slide number 49. 49 will get you over to the Google Sites section. I don't know how I messed that up that bad and got switched over to the wrong thing. If you can't find it, if you go back to slide number 3, these are all linked on here, so you can just click on sites. It'll jump you to the right spot in the slideshow. Okay. So we'll go ahead and continue on to our last section with Google Sites. Now, of course, Google Sites is a way for you to make your own website. Um, and this is really cool because teachers can use these for like class websites or like almost like class blogs. Or you can even have students use it to make a Google site for like a project. And we'll take a look at a couple examples of both of those. So let's go ahead and jump in real quick. First thing we need to do is make sure we're using the new Google Sites. When we come in here, like if we go over to the waffle, we'll still see the old Google Sites icon. This is the old one here, this blue one. That's the old one. If you come into it, that's going to give you all the old features. What we need to do is go to the new one, which may or may not be in your waffle. So what we'll do is we can come over into our Google Drive and go under New and then More, and then find Google Sites. That's how we can get into the new one. Or we can type in sites.new into the address bar. Either way, that'll give us a new Google site. Okay. And once we're in here, we can start making our own website. And believe it or not, you don't have to have any sort of web design knowledge to be able to do this. You don't have to know any coding to be able to do this. All this stuff is just dragging and dropping and moving stuff around. If you know how to make a slideshow, if you know how to put pictures or videos into your slideshow, you can do this. It's essentially the same skills here. So no coding knowledge needed. So I'll just make a class website here. Class website up in the top left there. In this first page here, this is like your header of your website here. So we can even change the style or the size of this header. So we can have it be a whole cover. Basically, when you come into the website, you just see a big old picture before you scroll down and start to see the content of the page. You can have it be a large banner, so it's like pretty big before you start seeing things, or smaller banner, or just no title at all. The most common one people use is the one called banner. We'll just stick with that one. Of course, on your side, you can do whichever one you like. And we'll just make our first page our home page. And from here, if we scroll down just a smidge, there's not much else here. It's just kind of a blank white area, right? So let's take a peek over to the right-hand side where we have these layouts. And these are just pre-built layouts for us where we can start adding pictures, we can add text or files, whatever we want. So we'll just grab any one of those layouts that you like. I'll just kind of grab whichever one I like. And you just click on it, it'll drop it into the page for you. And maybe I want to have a couple of files here, maybe a couple of pictures here. I'll grab something from my Google Drive here. Find some pictures. That looks good. A little picture of myself. Ethan. And there's, my bio, et cetera, et cetera. And then, maybe over here, we want to have maybe a file that's actually like a document. We can actually come over here and do from drive, and we can grab anything from our Google Drive. So I'll come in here and I'll find a document that I can share. Let me just find it some sort of example in here. Let's do, I don't even know. I'll just do this one, that's fine. And we'll drop that document in there. Now this is really small, so I want this thing to be bigger. So I'm gonna get rid of this one over here. I'm gonna click on the little garbage can. I'll make this thing bigger. And all this stuff is behaving just like pictures, right? And nothing is being, there's no buttons I'm pushing. It's just clicking and dragging just like a regular picture. The cool thing is I am moving an actual document here. All right, this is actually a Google Doc. And the awesome thing about this is all this stuff will work just like a regular, just almost like a slideshow, right? Where you just or like when we were over in the Google Drawing, it's all the same kind of skill here. It doesn't take too much to be able to do all this stuff. It's all just clicking and dragging and moving stuff around like that, and we can have just like that. We can have a whole bunch of stuff in our in our web page here. Now, as we're making this, if we want to take a step back and see what it looks like for people when they come in and visit my website, we'll come up to this icon up here that says preview. It'll give us a preview of this class website once somebody comes up and looks at it. And then here it is. This is now a live document over here. Whatever web pages or anything that's linked on here is all put together. I can even click on the little out button here. It'll take them out to the full version so they can see it in full screen there. And if we want to also look at it, if we want to see it, what it looks like on the mobile version, this is how it would look on somebody's smartphone, which is pretty cool too. Then we can click on the X to go back out to keep on editing here. There's a ton of buttons over here on the right-hand side. This is where all your tools and all your functions and everything are. So you can insert your own text boxes or images. You can put in an embed code from another website. You can grab any sort of files, anything that you want from your Google Drive. And like we saw, we looked at all these layouts from before, which kind of give you just a little template. You can have some collapsible text. So if you want to have like have a little text box in here, and maybe have like an FAQ or something section for for your class. What time does the live Google Meet class happen? And here, we meet every day at 10 a.m. in Google Meet, link in Google Classroom. All right, and this is what that looks like if you're in, here's what it looks like in mobile version. You kind of see it that way, or if you're on a desktop, this is what it'll look like. Again, have that little drop down button there, so it's super easy to see. And this is a pretty good looking website. If you try to sit here and even if you know all this coding and stuff, it's still going to take you a while. This is just a super fast, easy way to put all this stuff together. All right. Over on the right-hand side, again, there's a ton more of these options here. You can make a table of contents. You can make an image carousel where you have basically a rotating list of images here. So if I come in here and, search for dogs, do a couple of them. Get some good dogs in my website, because a website's just no good unless it has a bunch of pictures of dogs in it. Let's be real. And we'll insert these in here, and we can move this on anywhere on the page. You'll notice as I'm dragging, you'll have those little blue lines that show up, that it will show you that you're centered. You also have those little gray guiding lines in the background, but see now those blue lines don't show up. Now they're there. Now I know I'm in the middle of the page. All right, and then again, here's what that'll look like on the finished product once it's actually out. You'll be able to flip through your different pictures and see all the adorable doggos. All right. Other things that you can do, you can also make a button, which is basically just a link that you can post over to, links over to other websites. You can put in videos, you can put in your Google Calendar, anything from Google Maps or any of your Google documents. You can even make a chart as well. So remember earlier how we had that chart that came from that Google Sheet? We can come in here and choose that chart that is sitting inside of that document. And again, whenever live changes happen in that document, or in that Google Sheet rather, are going to change. So that was that Greyjoy. So here, real quick, just as a kind of as a point here, I think it was from this one. Come in here real quick. I think that was in quarter 2. It was quarter 3. Yeah, it's quarter 3. And so if I change Greyjoy back down to 500, oops. Oh boy. There we go. And that change is going to be reflected over in here. So if I come in here and do another preview, notice he changed back down to that 500. All that stuff is live. Let's see. What do you do with a web page when you are finished with it? Then it's time to start to share it out with people, get it published and out on the web for people to get to. I'll get to that in just a second. Somebody also asked, can you add audio to some of the pages? That's a good question, actually. I don't know. Let's take a peek. So if you want to insert like an audio clip, that's a good question. If we come in here, let's see if we can just do this from my drive here. I'm going to do a search. I'm going to search by file type. Ooh, it does not give us an option of audio. Let me see if I have, do I have any audio clips in here? Let's see, audio. Okay, so I have Buddy Holly. Let's see if this is going to show up in here. Aha, so no, it cannot. That's a really good question. So it apparently cannot. That's a bummer. Well, your workaround would be then, if you, I guess you have 2 workarounds. The easier one to do is if you embed that audio sound, into a Google slideshow, and then put that embedded into the website, that would work. So if we make a new slideshow here, slides.new, that's a really good question. We'll come in here and we'll just do audio test. We'll insert some audio. And we'll look for Buddy Holly. There we go. All right, so then we have our icon in here. Cool, just as our example. Let's put that in here now. I'll change this by last modified, so it'll be the first thing that shows up. And now we'll come into preview again here. And it plays. There it is. Okay, so this is so that is kind of your workaround. Other than that, you can just have a video as well. So you can just put in a YouTube video or a video from your drive in here as well. That will work too. That's a very good question. Hopefully they'll add that feature. Like I said, Google's always adding new stuff. If you want to see new things in any Google app, find the menu and find report a problem and leave some feedback. I'm gonna actually do that right now. So we should have the ability to add audio files into Google Sites. There we go. I really don't need a screenshot. I'll say send. Boom. There's our feedback, and Google actually does listen to those things. The more people that say those things, it's going to show up. Watch in like probably a few months, we'll start to see that rolled out. Like I know table of contents, this collapsible text, image carousel, those are all pretty new things that Google has put in here. So like I said, Google's always updating new stuff. Okay. So our next thing to do is once we have our pages filled out, we may want to have more pages filled with more stuff, right? So we have our home page here with a bunch of info in it, and then over here in the Pages tab, we can make another page, and maybe we want to have a page that's like all about like student work showcase. Maybe we want to show off some of our students' awesome work that they're doing. And then in the page here, we can come in here and insert some stuff from our drive. And, we have, maybe this activity student did over here. And then we can have like, this document as well. And all this stuff, of course, can just be moved around wherever you want it to go. You can resize it. Again, it all just behaves just like a picture, so you can resize it any way that you want. Okay. If you want to make some more pages, again, you can make as many as you want from this Pages tab. You can also nest pages in each within another, adding a sub page. So from in here, next to when you're hovered over one of your pages here, under the three dots, you can do add a sub page. So if I want to have a sub page under here, maybe I want to have a maybe like a parent feedback page under the student showcase. So this is how it'll show up. So there'll be a home page and then the student work showcase, and then under that is parent feedback. And we can even come in here and maybe we'll make like a little Google form for parents to fill out. Let me just come in here and just kind of make one here. Yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, let's do this little exit ticket thing. That's fine. All right, and then so then we have this Google form sitting right here on the website for us for people to check out. So if it's like, imagine instead of this just being like a an exit ticket like this, maybe it's like a survey for that parents can take, and they're leaving feedback for you or encouragement for their students or whatever it is. Okay, of course you can spend a ton of time just kind of filling these things out. And then finally, under the Themes tab up in the top right, this is where, of course, you can have your different themes for each one of your pages. You can have a totally different theme for each page. So you can change up the different ones. If you want to, you can have a different background picture. So you can even grab a picture from pretty much anywhere. So you can do a search, be able to do like a beach. So you can have like a nice little beach background, and again, you can play with any of these different backgrounds and kind of find which one makes you happiest. All right. Okay. And so then that brings us over to what do we do now when we're done building out the website, right? So what we need to do is we need to come up to the top right and do publish. All right. Now, the first thing that we're going to see is it's going to have you put in a web address. So this part is always going to stay the same here. So it's always going to be sites.google.com/yourdomain/blank. Now, whatever you put in this box here is going to have to be unique because it's going to a unique web address. Okay. You can, I believe you can leave it blank. I think it'll give you a, or maybe it won't. Yeah, it does. It does have to. You do have to put something in here. So you can just put in any sort of name. So like Mr. Neeson class website. Okay, and so now this is now a unique website for people to go into, and you can even change who can look at your website. So if you want to keep it locked down to only your students, so not people in the outside world, or you can open it up for other people to be able to look at. So if we want to change it so it's open, public, anybody on the internet can come and see it. You can have it locked down to just your domain, meaning only people on your school logged in with a school account can come into your website, or you can have it only specific people can come and look at your website. Okay, and then finally, you just come down to publish. And now this is a public website, or whatever option you chose there, that people can come into. All right. So if we come over here again, and let me grab that. Here we go. I'll copy this link here, and I'll go over to like one of my student accounts here. So as my student, here comes my student, and he's in the website now. And this is the finished website. It's a live up and ready website that the student can come into. He can see all this stuff that's going on. I need to make this one available for people to see. But then we have this little drop down question. Here's a picture of the doggos. Here's that little chart. All that same stuff is still available here for them to see. Okay. All right. Now, of course, if you have a that long link, sites.google.com/whatever city schools/whatever name that you put in, that can be a kind of a big thing for people to type in. So what I would recommend is using something like bit.ly or tinyURL to make a short link. So you can actually just make a short link here out of your website, which would make it a lot easier for people to type it in. Okay, if you're just sharing the link on Google Classroom or like through a remind message or whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're gonna have people typing in your website, it makes it a lot easier if you have a shortened website, so they only have to type in bit.ly/whatever. Okay, so that is a pretty cool thing to do as well. All right, and the big two are bit.ly and tinyURL. Go.gl is on the outs. I don't even think you can actually use it anymore. I think they've actually stopped it. Yeah, yeah, you're not able to use it anymore. And Rebrandly is good too, but it's a bit heavy duty. It's kind of more than you need. But bit.ly or tinyURL is all you would need. Okay. You can always unpublish your site as well. If you need to, take it down and make changes to it or whatever you need to do, I can take it back down, and that stops people from getting into it again. And if I need to, take it back under construction and make changes again, you can totally do that. All right. All right, and then of course there's tons of ideas for ways to use Google Sites for classroom purposes. Of course, you can do things like making a class website, creating a class blog, doing some flipped instruction, showing off student work, doing some like tech support even. Here's some examples of, let's see if this is working. Yeah, Google Sites for teachers and students here. Here's some student examples. So you may have things like, let's see if this is still up here. So yeah, here's Noah, who graduated in 2016 here. Here's his classroom project. It's his graduate portfolio looks like. So he has this whole proposal thing, and he has a journal, and it's a really great way to display a ton of information in one spot and actually make it look pretty professional and make it look nice. Okay, and this is really good for projects. It's really good for portfolios. Of course, there's tons of different ways to use it. Okay. All right. All right, so this is pretty much going to bring us down towards the end here. If you want to, you can feel free to kind of poke around in Google Sites here. I'm not going to break off into a break again just yet because I'll go into my wrap up and then we'll basically be finishing up for the day. But if you need to, you are more than welcome to hang out in here and poke around in Google Sites or anything that that we talked about today. Somebody just asked a question. If a student wanted to create a site that was not linked to a school domain, what would you suggest? They are able, I believe you are able to make, he could just make the Google site in a personal Gmail account, so it's to not linked to a school. So if he just makes it from his own personal uh, Google account, that would be probably the easiest thing to do. If he wants more options, he can use like outside web development programs like WordPress or Squarespace. There's lots of other ones out there. All right, and then if you want to play around more in Google Sites, feel free to. But as a group here, we will not take another lunch break. We already did that. We'll come down and kind of come down to come down into the end here. There's more stuff to check out in the Google world, of course. I jumped down to slide 82 if you're following along with me here. On slide 82, we have a couple more links for you guys to check out at your leisure here. Big one to look at is Blogger. That one is a website builder as well. That one's specifically more for like making blog type websites. Big websites like Eric Kurtz's website, the controlaltachieve.org or .com. He runs that off of Blogger. Tons of those like tech gurus run their websites off of Blogger because it's really easy to use. It's so simple to kind of update and do everything you need to do. So that's a really great way to make a class blog, or if you want students to make their own. Google Arts and Culture is a very cool thing to check out as well. Of course, Google Calendar, setting up like a parent-teacher conference appointment slots. Google Cardboard is your virtual VR headsets. Of course, we looked at Google Earth and Expeditions. And there's even more stuff to check out, of course. Google Quick Tips here on slide number 84 is another link there for you guys. To the I guess this one now reroutes to the G Suite Learning Center. So these types of websites are just really good for getting quick answers to stuff that you're looking for. Of course, feel free to email me with any questions that you have as well. Other types of Google tips rather, doing present mode in Google Slides, of course, like we have going on in here, is where we can. Let me actually do it this way. Doing present mode in Google Slides opens up a couple of more things that you may not have known about. If this loads for me here, things like you can get a laser pointer that's built in. You can also have some closed captioning, and you can also do Q&A, do some built-in questions and answers with your students in the middle of a Google slide as well. And we'll jump back down here again. Lost my spot. There we go. So there's more to check out in there. Of course, hyperdocs are probably one of my favorite things, just in general, because they're just so useful. Hyperdocs are interactive and clickable, either Google Docs or Google Slides or Google Drawings that are a whole assignment built in one. The activity that we did earlier, way earlier when we were doing Google Drawings, the little map activity with the circles, that was almost kind of like a hyperdoc there. Only difference is we would have some more links in there that link over to other activities or articles or things for students to do in addition to what's happening on the worksheet. Of course, there's just so much more for you guys to check out. Of course, there's little extra tips and tricks in here and just fun stuff to play around with in Google. And of course, the big thing to know that I want you guys to take home from today is you don't have to know everything. You know, I don't know everything. I don't claim to know everything. Um, I like the idea very much of thinking backwards, meaning you have a goal or an idea in mind that you need to accomplish, and chances are there's a tool or a strategy in G Suite that lets you do that. Okay, you don't have to know every single formula and how it works in Google Sheets. You don't have to know every single trick in Google Forms. You just need to know what you need to know in order to be a good teacher. That's all you really need to know. Okay. So with that said, technology is meant to make your job easier. Use it to make problems and to solve problems and make your classroom a better place to learn. That's the whole point, right? We don't want to make things harder for ourselves. You didn't sit through this 5-hour webinar today to stress out about not knowing enough, right? That's not the point. The point is to be able to have a little bit of a foundation of knowledge to be able to use this stuff effectively and efficiently. That's the whole point, right? We just needed to know what we need to know in order to get our job done, right? Teaching is the main point. Technology is here to help, right? It's here to make things a little bit easier. All right. With that said, any other questions, again, feel free to shout them out. There's our checklist from the beginning. We started out in Google Keep, making some sticky notes, virtual sticky notes. Then we went to Google Drawings, and the Google Forms, and then Classroom. Then we came back and did some Google Sheets, and then we did some Meet and Maps, and then we jumped back over to Sites because I made them out of order. And then we kind of are in our wrap-up stage right now. All right. Now, any other questions, again, feel free to shout out. On the very last slide, there's that sign in. If you did not sign in at the beginning, please do so. Those are the emails I'm collecting in order to send the certificates of attendance. If you are interested in the graduate credit, that was on slide number 4 is info for graduate credit if you need that. There's also a survey in this pink box here in the bottom of the very last slide. All right. Before you go, just on your way out, drop me a comment in the chat or unmute yourself and just let me know what was your favorite bit from today. Feel free to shout out. And other than that, guys, thanks so much for coming. I know it was a long one. These all-day ones are super long to sit through, but I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. Other than that, feel free to drop some words in the chat about your favorite bits from today or any questions that you have. Now I'll shut up now because my voice is starting to die. Thanks so much for coming, guys. I'll see you next time.